So let's talk about this new Rich Paul interview. If you guys didn't see, Gilbert Arenas has a show called Gil's Arena, and he just came in with a new episode with Rich Paul. If you guys don't know, Rich Paul is basically the biggest manager in the NBA. He's an agent, right? He has his own group, and let's talk about it. First, to start off, I'm going to explain who Rich Paul is. You guys can skip 2 or 3 minutes and I'll be done, but it's just for anyone who doesn't know. Rich Paul is an NBA agent, mostly known. He's also a businessman, CEO, whatever you want to say. And basically, he manages players in the NBA, young, old, and whatever. He's the most well renowned NBA agent because he works with most of the big clients in the NBA, right? And he's been known to be basically the face of what a good agent looks like for a player in the NBA. You know, he's a player who, no, he's an agent who gets his players a lot of money, who gets them a lot of opportunities, and who has consistently been one of the best NBA agents out there. Right? Him and LeBron are the founders of Clutch Sports Group, which is a group which focuses on, signing players, getting them, managing them, and basically it runs them. And he himself is the manager of most of these players who are signed to Clutch, right? This includes Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Fred VanVleet, Jeremy Grant, right? And all these big time players who you see getting big contracts every year, a lot of them have to do with Clutch Sports. Clutch Sports is basically the best organization if you want a player to get money, if you want a player to get, good representation, and also that they're one of the most business savvy organizations out there when it comes to getting you good opportunities in the NBA. And Rich Paul basically has a reputation which precedes him, which is mostly about just getting players money and being looked at as not a favorable guy. It's not because of what he says or what he does. It's mostly because of the NBA contracts which he negotiates, right? Because every single contract that he negotiates normally ends up being like sort of a steal, It ends up being way bigger than usual, and it ends up being one of these contracts which, they're big and they hold a lot of weight. And that's always caused a guy like Rich Paul to be under fire because people think that he's scamming NBA organizations, with the contracts that he negotiates with them. And he makes the type of contracts and negotiates the type of contracts that you look at in a comment section where people say, oh my God, this is a steal. No, oh my God, they just robbed a team, right? So in this interview, right, Rich Paul basically focuses on how the NBA works, talking about it, and I want to go over a few things since I watched it, and I want to talk about what it says. First, I want to say that Rich Paul is very smart, and the first point that I want to bring up that he said is how he goes about NBA players and the NBA draft, right? He was talking a lot in the interview about NBA players, professionalism, what it takes, and I like that and there was, at the start of the interview, there was a section which was basically dedicated to saying like, hey, I draft players, and the way that I make players, go to certain teams is by fit, and this is something that I really liked. Where he said like, if I have a young 6'7" wing, right? Where would I want him to go? What team would I want him to go to? And I really liked what he said because basically he's, I think, the manager of Marjon Beauchamp, right? And of Chris Livingston, which are two players which have been drafted to the Bucks in recent years. And he basically said like, yo, I send them to those teams and I got them to go to those teams for the main reason that they were actually going to get to develop there, to play there. And it's an organization which is going to take care of them and has a good organization around them, right? And who has a good management. I like that he said that, that I don't draft players based on money or position. I don't care about that, right? Like if a player goes 2 or if he goes 6, that doesn't matter to me, or if he goes 30 or if he goes, 12. That doesn't matter to him. What matters is the best opportunity, right? Like if you have he said this, right? It's not a direct quote, but he said like if I have a player who's a superstar, right? And he falls to who has superstar qualities, right? Coming out of the draft, and he falls to me, right? And the chances of drafting him, let's say, are OKC and Chicago, then obviously I want that player to go to Chicago because it's a bigger city, it's going to maximize him more, and it's a place where he gets to develop those qualities and really develop his potential out, right? He also said that, like, you have to look at a player and who they are, how they play, and what they are projected to be when it comes to signing players to teams. Like, I'm sorry, but if you have a team like the Warriors, which is you right, like you have Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Chris Paul, and you have all these guards. Why would you ever want your guards to go to Golden State? Like, yeah, they're gonna get developed really well, but when it comes to your players, right? Like, why would you ever want a player going to a team where they might not get minutes like that, right? Where they might not get the opportunity, right? Because if I'm sending a center, I would most likely want him to go to a team like Golden State. Because if they can develop him, they can bring him through, then eventually he'll be able, right, to have a much better career, right, and a much better opportunities if he has Steph Curry and Klay Thompson there, right, to back him up, than if he goes to another team where he's expected to do everything or where he doesn't even get the play time, right? Also, I liked what he said about the ecosystem of an athlete, right? I liked what he said about like that NBA players need good teams around him, right? They need good things. They need good organization. You need to be in touch with their friends. They need to have a cook, a driver, an assistant, people around them who are good for them. And I like that he said this because it's true, right? When you look at a guy like LeBron James, Rich Paul was one of the guys who was around him. And he, if you see the pictures, he's kept the same group of friends ever since he came into the NBA to when now he's 38 years old, been in the NBA for almost 21 years now. So when you really look at a player, I like that he said that like everything around them is important, right? And by the way, I'm taking what he's saying and I'm analyzing it myself and I'm saying it, right? Another thing is that players need to understand the game, right? And I really like, another thing that I really like that came up in this interview is where he said like, hey, players need to understand the game, right? Like if you have a guy like Melo who laughed at the idea of starting, I don't know if you guys have seen that interview, but basically Carmelo Anthony, when he was with the OKC Thunder, he laughed at a question where they asked him if he would come off the bench. Like that type of attitude will get you out of a contract. And treating players badly, and if you're a superstar and you treat your coaching staff badly, when you start becoming worse, you're not going to be able to have that luxury anymore because let's face it, no player is going to be a superstar forever. The only player who's ever done that is LeBron, and he's an anomaly. But the problem is that when players need to understand the business side, like being a superstar, being cordial, being a good person. Because if you see a guy like Giannis, who's completely been phenomenal to his entire organization, when Giannis becomes a worse NBA player, there's going to be a lot of doors still open for him because he hasn't mistreated anybody in his organization. But let's say when James Harden, right, gets worse and it now has to go. When James Harden's abilities drop, right, to the point where most NBA teams are going to have to think about wanting him and stuff like that, James Harden has closed so many doors, has been bad to so many coaching staffs, and has played a certain way and has done certain things to the point where he has closed so many doors to the fact that he may not play 20 years in the league, even if he can, because it's just going to be a sad situation where, yes, you're good, you're amazing, but our team's going to really want you when you've treated them a certain way all your life, and those executive coaches and those guys in the staff who now have a higher position, are they really going to want you now? I say all this to say that I really like the interview and I like some of these points. I wanted to cover some of them, and let me know what you guys think about these points, because I found them interesting and I recommend the interview. So tell me what you think.